yeah, I thought maybe I'd ask you guys a series of questions that tap into issues around relationships, broadly speaking, whether it's communications, intimacy, all that stuff. And then on a later show, maybe you could ask me a bunch of questions that either you guys come up with or some of your listeners come up with that that are in my realm or in my wheelhouse. So anything to do with mental health, sexuality, sexual health, and I can do the best I can to, if not answer questions, to ask more exploratory questions to help people figure out what they might need to ask themselves more of. How
Sure.
does that sound?
That's
Yeah,
awesome. That sounds great. That sounds great.
All right.
And are you cool with us releasing this first so that then we can
Yeah.
that they can kind of get an idea of who you are and who they'd want to be talking to, so they can just like, hey, send questions. We're gonna do another one of these talks. I think that'd be really cool.
Release away. That
All
sounds
right.
great.
Yay. Cool. Well, awesome.
Well,
We'll ask away.
first-
We're here.
Okay, well, first, can you tell me just a little bit about you? So each of you take a turn, but tell me whatever it is you want to tell me about that isn't work related and isn't porn related.
Go for it.
First?
Yeah,
I don't know.
go for it.
I don't
Well,
know.
I mean, yeah, sure, I'll start. You just want a little background, a little something about me that isn't porn, that isn't necessarily. Okay, sure.
Like, who is this tall, handsome guy? I want more.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. I come from Atlanta. I have grown up spending a lot of time outdoors. I've done a variety of jobs. I have not really found the right career path for me until I think, we stumbled into the adult world, and
Right.
and it's interesting. I'm actually I've had a lot of desires when I was younger to learn things like camera and video and things like that, and I've always put it off, and now I'm kind of working that back into my life now. But who was I leading up to that? I mean, I did everything from valet work to solar work, working for solar companies and learning how to do electricity, and which I didn't actually learn very much about. It turns out it's pretty scary stuff. Didn't want to get electrocuted.
That's a great reason to
I
not
went
do
to massage
electrical work.
school, and I think that was probably one of the biggest trajectory changes in my life. I realized, doing the valet work, doing a regular job that I just was doing for money and didn't really care much about was not really for me, and that I wanted to help people and provide a service for people. And I said, you know what, I'm going to go to massage school. I had some friends who were there and decided that was what I was going to go do, and I was going to explore that. And it really was probably the most impacting thing I think that I've ever done. And I got my hands on people and got people's hands on me, and I learned a lot about the body, and I learned a lot about a little bit about psychology. I started to kind of break into the psychological world there, and the mind-body connection is something that I think a lot about, and so I think I bring that to our porn world and our interactions with people.
Yeah. So you're still doing electrical work, just in another dimension with people. You're connecting hands and bodies.
Right.
That's very interesting.
Right.
Actually, it's a really good point. I never thought about it that way. Thank you
Yeah,
for
we're
that
making connections
observation.
for sure.
Melissa, how about you? What is your outside of porn bio, if you will?
Well, right now we really are, at this point, it's sort of this interwoven aspect of our lives. So outside of porn, it's just kind of like we have a really great community of friends, and we love to go to Burns, which are like Burning Man, but there's other local events. So they have some in Georgia and other places, and so we really like doing that and just kind of hanging out with artists and just interesting people and things like that. And that's a big change from where I was. I was just the standard grow up in white suburbia, very athletic, based family, like get your scholarships and play football and all that kind of stuff. Went to a very good undergrad, did my master's, was working on my PhD, was going into the direction of linguistics and sociolinguistics in that sense. So that's sort of where I have a background in some sociology and psychology elements. But yeah, I kind of had a change of heart and sort of left that profession and was wandering and doing private lessons and things like that, and dabbled with the camming and the video making, and then just really liked it. So kind of I've had a major trajectory change as well, going from academia to porn, basically. And I also taught a lot of Spanish in that time too, for about 10 years. So that
sounds great.
Yeah, that's who I used to be.
When you say you're really interested in doing the burns, like Burning Man and other local events, what's the thrill of that for you? What draws you to that?
I find it to be a celebration of life. And
tell me more.
Sorry, you got me with that one, man. You know how sometimes when you're really excited as a little kid, people will tell you to calm down, or maybe like don't do that thing because it's, you're just. I feel like the burn is that place where everyone gets to be the little kid again, and they get to do that thing, and everybody's cheering this time instead of telling them to like stop being so loud, or to calm down, or to like don't be that way, don't wear that, that's not appropriate, don't play with that, don't. It's like all those don'ts and all those moments. It's like you and it's just you get to see hundreds, sometimes thousands of adults having these experiences, and it's just so not only are you healing with yourself, but you're watching all these other people do it too, and it's and just that those connections that are made, and the emotional healing and the openness that you can feel there, I think has been such an impactful thing for me personally. I've struggled with mental health my whole life, and been on medicine or gone to therapy, and the amount of healing that I got, within 3 or 4 years in the burn community was much more beneficial than maybe 25 years in the communities that I had previously kind of encountered.
If ever, maybe,
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say that like, there aren't great. I hadn't found any. Like, this was what I found that worked for me. I don't know what else is out there that's great or anything. I'm not an expert on that, but that's why I like them.
So much of mainstream or most kinds of therapy is talk therapy, and you're talking about something very experiential, right? Yeah. And just when you told me about your very cut out path of what you were intended to do, and how you were stepping in all the, along that path the way you were following that brick road.
Yeah, I did what I was supposed to do. I was a good guy, followed all the rules.
Yeah. And in therapy, when I talk to people about sexuality, sexual identity, there's so much fear, and I think it's because of like certain kinds of trauma. And I'm not talking about sexual abuse trauma, though that can be there. I'm talking about just shame and regulation of the body trauma. Like, when you said, don't do this, you can't do that. And I think it can be so freeing to know that we have autonomy over our bodies. We have options. We can make choices, and the next day say, you know what? Not such a great choice, but also not a huge consequence. It's not the end of the world. Or we could say, right. I made a choice, and now... like, I feel good about that, and it's okay to revel in that for a bit.
Absolutely.
And so, it sounds like
maybe the consequences weren't so bad as I thought they would be.
Yeah, and now that what you're saying is really interesting, because I'm coming up, because one of the things I got told a lot was that put your legs together, it's unladylike. Don't do that, or don't, especially if I was wearing a skirt, then I couldn't play on the outside, whatever they're called, the jungle gyms and all that kind of stuff. My mom was like, no, your skirt is going to come up. And, and I'm like, 4, okay, so it's like, who cares? But it's interesting because at a burn, that kind of behavior is celebrated. Just be silly, whatever. But also at camming, and I think that's why I found camming, because I saw what camming was doing, and I was like, oh, that's just what I do at the burns. So it kind of translates. I feel like camming also provides that experience of, if you allow for it, just this lack of shame, and you can kind of be yourself and do those things and put your butt in the air, and when your parents told you to, sit up properly, you don't have to do that, and everybody loves to celebrate that silliness. So.
I think,
and Jason, is your butt up in the air as well? Is that a thing?
Oh, often.
Yes.
Sure. Absolutely.
Sometimes with a Bluetooth vibrator in it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to come to that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute.
I have personal questions about that. I just want to mention one more thing before I move on to another question I have. It's more of a comment, actually. I think, Melissa, when you talk about coming from such, a regulating family or community or society, it's interesting that you talk about the burns and also camming. It seems like you create another sacred space that is somehow not public but public and your own, and I feel like that's very interesting, right? So
that was exactly on the tip of my tongue about right at the end of that last statement. I was going to say, yeah, she's just incorporated what she's learned at the burns and in this other area of her life, and she's like, oh, I like the way that feels. I like that space. Let me build that own little space to share with others. Yeah.
Porn, it's like that for so many of us, right? I could look a certain way when I go to work, and people aren't going to, by looking at me, know what porn I'm watching, how much I'm masturbating.
Sure.
Like, there's like a private, public, there's two different domains. These are two different spheres for a lot of people.
Yeah,
and
identity
for a lot of people is important. But for you guys, it's a little bit, it's a murkier. It's wrapped into wine.
It's murkier.
It's a little more, I mean, it's more fluid, and it's like we're consciously incorporating it that way. We want more fluidity. We want aspects of our day-to-day life to be incorporated into our online presence, and I don't know, we like that depth when we experience that with other people as well.
Okay.
So,
well, Melissa, when you talked about what was expected of you, so much of it sounded gendered to me, and I wonder if you're like, this is what a lady should do, it seems like porn, camming, this line of work is in some way a resistance to that strong messaging.
Very much.
And Jason, for you, is there an element of resisting gender norms at all, or because for men, I find it's often having sex, being able to have sex with women is celebrated. It's not regulated in the same way. So I'm curious for you what that's like.
So, well, can you? So what exactly is your question in there?
Question is, do you feel like with porn you're resisting norms? And two, is there a gender dynamic as a guy doing this work that you notice that's different than maybe what Melissa experiences?
Yeah, I think we experience different types of acceptance and pushback and praise and shame from a variety of different places out there. People view us and experience what we're offering in a variety of different ways. They're interpreting my expression in a variety of different ways. And I'm, on a personal level, I'm feeling like I wonder how I come across. If I think there's people that are questioning whether or not, like, I'm a heteronormative presenting male. I have facial hair, and I have I think there's some things about my aesthetic presence that might come across as heteronormative, and then they might see some of our content and they're like, oh wow, okay, he's actually with another male and he seems pretty comfortable. Or at least I feel comfortable when I'm with other males that I'm comfortable with, obviously. And awesome. And so I think I get some pushback from that at times. So, but for the most part, the community seems to be really accepting of. Maybe I'm not answering this question right. But
I get what you're saying. It's like it's like he's not considered a man in porn really because he's. Right?
Well, people come into our room and they're like, they see my long hair and they're like, oh wow, look, two lesbians.
Yeah, they do that all the time. They call us two lesbians all the time.
So people
they call me a guy.
I'm confusing. The gender thing is definitely a thing in my world where I'm not this normal, like, strong, stern, like, ultra,
like the gym
ultra masculine, aggro presenting male. I have moments, but I don't know. I think my own internal reality is that I want to play with that a little bit. I want people to question that what I'm doing. I want people to wonder. I want to have a little bit of a mystique there. Not necessarily because I want to confuse people, but because I just want people to remember that that's okay. And that they don't need to clearly define every single person that they're interacting with. They're like, wow, this person's really making me kind of question what I'm observing here. And I'm staying and I'm participating with this person and I'm engaging with them and the flow is happening. And so I think that's an interesting space to be in.
So I'm just going to to reflect that back, the way I'm hearing it is really like, on the one hand, Melissa's resisting some very like set out, rigid societal norms.
Yeah, like
And
I'm
for you,
protesting.
yeah, and Jason, for you, you show up in the world as somebody that looks like, somebody that's pretty heteronormative, as you said. So like a straight white guy, tall, all of this. You got the beard. You've got these characteristics of masculinity, and you are using your work in a way to challenge people's assumptions about how you can look at what the implications are, what that means or doesn't mean about identity, sexuality, what's possible. And I like that idea of like, you're on screen and your audience might think they're watching straight porn for a bit, and then you're like, hey, look at this other thing I can do.
Right. Hey, look at this dildo over here.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas mine is more like, they said sex was bad, so look at me, here's what I'm doing. I don't think he got the message quite so much that sex is bad. You know what I mean? Like, he's not, I don't think that but I definitely am here, and I'm here to, like, my armpits are hairy because I'm, like, purposefully trying to say, I'm protesting the shaving and the cultural, like, I guess I'm making a stink.
I'm discovering that there's these things that I want to play with and ideas that I want to play with, but I don't feel like I'm, like, out to make a really hard statement from the get-go. Like, that's not my...
Yeah, but I had to choose between family and this. So I had to make, it's like, it's one or the other. So I'm totally rejected. And I'm, a disgrace, and they think I'm a horrible person. So, and I knew that would happen. And so for me, in order to, like, follow my heart, I had to really believe in my revolution or something, because to be strong enough for it. Yeah. So.
I appreciate that. That can be a lonely place, right?
Yeah. So you got to, like, have your cause to keep you warm at night sometimes.
Right. That makes sense. So tell me both maybe a little bit about when you guys met and how long after you met you decided to make porn together. Like professionally, right? Like lots of couples do pictures and cams and, some amateur stuff, but you guys took it to another level.
So we met in 2014, and we started dating. At the time, actually, I was married in an open relationship. Okay. And so it was, it wasn't like three of us, but it was, I had two partners for a time, and then I just was kind of getting to the point where it was really difficult because it was like, I just really want to spend a lot of time with him. And there wasn't anything terribly wrong with the other partner. I just liked him a lot and wanted to be around him, and all of our kind of energy and ideas and activities of the day kind of lined up. And so it was just, we just kind of started spending a lot of time together, and then eventually got together. And he had mentioned like videos and putting out amateur videos at one point, and I looked it up, but nothing really came of it. I think we just like stumbled across like an old self-shot thing. I had recorded myself on my laptop jerking off one time way before we met, and I think I just kind of like showed that off, and then I think we just decided to record ourselves because we thought it was hot, and I said, hey, there's a place we could put this, and maybe people will see it, and maybe we'll get paid for it. I don't know. I just remember that like stuck around in my head for like a year, and then we did it, and then again didn't really pay much attention. Like we put something on Pornhub, and didn't really pay much attention to it, and then... We really didn't. We set it there, and we did not revisit it for, like, months and months. Didn't check in on the views, didn't log into our account. We just put it out there and literally forgot. Whatever. And then I think maybe we got a check from them, and we were like, oh, because I thought they were gonna... Like, I'm a super nihilist, so I thought that everything's a ripoff, so you were gonna upload your content, and then they weren't gonna pay you. So I did it. Yeah. I kind of did it to spite him because he was like, no, it's real. And I was just know-it-all with my nihilism there. But yeah, anyway. So yeah, we started dabbling in camming in 2016. We did not decide to make it a full-time thing till the beginning of 2018. So we had been in a relationship for about a year before we like put a video out. And we had been in a relationship for like almost 4 years before we decided to make it our full-time shebang. Sounds about right. Yeah. We actually met though. We met camping at a burn. Right. She and her husband, her ex-husband,
showed up, put their tent and stuff right next to my stuff. We were all part of a bigger group. We were all camping together as a large group, but I didn't know them yet.
Yeah.
And when they showed up, we all met, and I don't know, she and I just hit it off really, really well. And I had already offered the whole camp like some of my massage services. I was like, hey guys, I'm offering massage this weekend.
Right.
If anybody wants to get on the table, feel free.
I'm doing my human electricity, no big deal.
Yeah,
The transferable skills, here we are.
And she took me up on it, and towards the end of the massage, she was just like, hey, like, I'm really turned on by this. I really like you. And so we started the conversation about their relationship and status of all that, and is everything cool with, the ex-husband. And anyway, worked it out and started spending a lot of time together and just spent even more time.
And we got married in 2018, I think. Yeah. So, and then now we're hopefully expecting a baby. So.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to me like from the beginning, Melissa, at least you were steeped in a relationship structure and model that demands a lot of communication. Would you say you're particularly good at relationship communication and sexual communication?
I wouldn't say I'm good at it, but I'm aware of what is good communication. I'm working on it being my reaction, but sometimes I'm just like, shit comes out of my mouth and I'm like, what? How's that helping anyone here? So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Jason, how would you rate your own relationship communication?
On a 1 to 10, I suppose.
On the scale, yes.
Yeah, well,
10 being really great and 1 being not good at all.
Right. I would say I'm gonna say maybe a 6, maybe better than average, but room for improvement.
Okay, you guys are very modest. These are good answers. I want to know then, as a 6, and I think Melissa, you sound like
I could be a 6 too, I guess.
You know what? We'll put you at a 7.
Okay, we'll put me at a 7. That way it's a little bit of a change there.
Only because you seem to already be in what sounds like a poly relationship before, and you probably were doing more communicating than you realized.
That's a good point. And I was married before, so I guess I suppose in that sense of relationship.
Probably doing more work than the average person in a relationship. You just don't necessarily realize that it's a skill that you have.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I understand a lot of things. I just don't know if the communication is good. I feel like I understand a lot of why things happen, or, oh, yep, that's why that led to that, and but I just don't know if I'm able to communicate my needs properly, or really my issue is communicating my qualms, my problems,
Okay. And Jason, for you, is that similar, where there's a strong intuition about what's going on, what the problem could be, where the gaps are, but it's harder to articulate, or is it different for you?
Yeah, I'd say that's probably pretty accurate. I think we're both extremely intuitive with each other, but we're not necessarily able to communicate sort of our own needs in a way that's really harmonious with what we're perceiving from the other person. Or sometimes it's like, yeah, go ahead.
It's like our egos it's like we know what to do, but sometimes you get really mad, and it's just not helpful to get mad. You're trying to have this communication, but you're all like, can't believe he did that shit. You know what I mean? So it's like I still don't have complete control over my ego, so my ego still acts like a little brat sometimes. Therefore, it might get really upset with him, and I can't communicate something that I need. Instead, I'm just crying I never get this thing. You know what I'm saying? Whatever that's called is just the little baby Melissa inside sometimes acts up.
But I should point out a couple of things. I think our culture says communication is the key over and over and over, but actually, sometimes less communication is okay if there's a lot of intuitive understanding.
Yeah.
Being forced to articulate something might put you in a position where you're being set up to fail.
That's how I feel. That's brilliant.
That's nice to hear from someone who knows more than we do about it.
Totally agree. I think that's how I'm feeling. I'm feeling like I'm going, you know what? I think I just need some time right now to sit with this and just let it digest and let things calm down and let me come to some new realizations here and to observe this from a different place. Maybe I need to eat. Maybe I need to eat some food or rest or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Sandwich first, obviously. Before any serious conversation, have a sandwich. This is my professional advice.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Exactly. So,
The other thing I would say is, I like this idea of the egos, because I don't know that, on the one hand, your ego can get in the way, but your ego is also something that, let's say it's being activated. I would think about it as a shield, because you felt maybe too vulnerable. So think about it as something that can get you into trouble, but is also something that is intended to protect you, whether it's protecting your integrity, your vulnerability, your sense of self-concept, all of that stuff.
Yeah, so, that's a really good point. Yeah. And I do think of it like that, but I think it's like when it comes up, when, let's say you're talking and then suddenly, whoop, it comes up, it's more like, okay, I gotta go deal with that thing now. So it's not really a bad thing. It's just sort of showing me where I'm weak and need to work on myself. So a lot of times I feel like I'm not able to communicate with him really well, but I am learning a lot about myself, for example,
Sure. Okay. Well, this brings me to my big question, actually, about starting porn. I imagine that you thought it was going to be wildly fun and exciting, and I'm sure it has been, right? But what were some of the first conversations you had to have, or if they weren't explicit conversations, some of the first experiences that were difficult for you? So they might be anxieties, concerns, worries. It could have been articulated or not articulated, but for each of you, what were some of those first concerns or challenges?
I think the first place a lot of people start is, I think where I started was, am I comfortable exposing myself in front of other people, whether that's recorded or live? Am I just comfortable, even in my own home space, whether I see them or not, or hear them or not, or am I just knowing that I'm exposed online like that? Is that comfortable? Realizing that I was comfortable with that, I think my next question was, what if people I know find out, and how do I think they will perceive what I'm doing, and what am I going to do with that information? Am I comfortable with them? Am I comfortable enough in this project I'm wanting to do, and this thing that I'm wanting to take on, this expression that I feel like I have, enough to accept their judgment, essentially.
And what did you take it a step further? You worry about control of information. What might people do if they had it in their hands, or like the worlds start to collide? What did you think the implications could be? Like, what did you worry might happen?
Right. So I think the thing that probably came up the most for me is, I think this kind of goes along with how my view of the world changed when I went to massage school. I felt like I went into a healer mode. I feel like I turned on a healer switch. Like, I want the world to be better and people to be better in the world. So by providing this sexually explicit content, am I healing or harming the world, or is that just a false question to begin with? Is this bad for the world as a whole? Is it good? Because I've heard conflicting material. I'm drawn to it. I'm engaging with it. I have a natural tendency to consume the content, and I'm attracted to providing it. And I think it's provided value to my life. However, I've seen a lot of material and some people's judgments about it being bad, and this is bad, and this is psychologically harmful, and people are addicted, and this is shameful, and like, how dare you? And all these people are like, no, that's bad, and sex workers are, anyway. So I think those are the types of things I wanted to be in harmony with, and to be able to justify all of that when we started. So.
Jason, initially you were talking about how people might judge you, but what you're saying is that they might judge you as being part of an industry or a system that is harmful.
Yes.
So you weren't thinking that they would judge you as having porn as your livelihood, or having sex for
That's like
living.
Secondary. The primary is probably more of a holistic worldview, more of like, because I want what I do in the world, and I want the work that I take on to matter, and I want it to be good for the world. I'm not just out there to like get and grab and take money and to, do that. you know, when my needs are met and when my world around me is good and happy, then my life is better. You know, when everyone around me
You really are
Yeah,
a
it's true.
sexy hippie.
We're on brand.
Melissa, help me out here. Tell me about some of the earlier anxieties, concerns, conversations. You know, the concerns could also be articulated or not that you had when you began this work. And it could be about yourself as somebody doing porn, or it could be something about the relationship.
I think everything he said was pretty much a concern of mine, as well as, like, the body stuff. Like, are they going to think I'm pretty or not? I think that's just, like, it goes through everyone's head.
You are so pretty.
I had body shame stuff, too. Yeah.
Right. I mean, and the minute you get on there, almost everybody that's ever gets on there gets great feedback about their body, because there's somebody for everybody, you know, if that makes any sense.
Right.
And so it's a really body positive space, but I think we all have those moments like, am I worth a shit? Am I worth seeing in this, you know, context? And then, yeah, all the other societal things. And then all the other, like, the privacy shit, you know, like, how do I keep, what should I keep safe and how do I keep it all safe? Those were anxieties. But
Tell me more about that, because, like, your porn is pretty public. And was there a sense from you that you wanted to keep certain things less public or confined to a certain domain, to a certain site, a certain time of day?
We just want to make sure our real names and address aren't out there, pretty much. And that's just mostly for, like, family members' reasons, also just for our own safety and anonymity. Just don't want people coming to our house. That's pretty much it. Yeah. So I just didn't know how to register, for example. You know, I was just really nervous about, let's say, registering a domain name, and I just wanted to make sure and triple check that we had hidden the information about who bought the domain. Does that make sense? Or like registering a business, like, can they look it up? Well, how can they look it up? And how do we, what about a PO box? And okay, I gotta, you know, so it was like stuff like that. So it's like I made friends with the PO guy, you know, and I'm like, okay, here's my ID, but the mail's gonna come under this other name, you know. And so stuff like that's just kind of scary, you know, like signed out of Facebook, deleted like a lot of the my personal social media accounts to create the new ones, and don't attach your phone number, and don't like get the thing where it syncs the contacts and stuff like that, and learning how to take like all the little tags off of the when you take a picture, there's all this like location tags and stuff that can be on there, so learning about that, getting that off. So just stuff like that. A lot? Yeah, there's just a lot of like actual privacy stuff. Yeah, protecting your identity that I was just concerned about. Just because I had done a lot of work with academia and work with other like people that I consider prominent, very well-respected individuals in industries not at all related to porn. So I'm just trying to respect that other people might not want to cross worlds and run, you know, do this, and I understand that. But I was not worried about people judging us or rejecting us. I just simply knew it would happen. Like, I wasn't like, oh my God, I'm wondering what my grad school friends are going to say. I was just like, they're probably not going to find it, because no one's reached out to me so far. They probably aren't going to find it because they're probably not like up to date on it. This is very like high tech porn, and my grad school friends aren't high tech. Okay, like, there's not. No, they're not going to do that shit. So I was like, first of all, they're not going to find us. Second of all, if they do, they'd probably just be like, you know, like I was.
That's interesting.
Yeah, like I didn't really worry
if she can do an interview.
Yeah, you know, like I don't know, I just didn't really worry about it. I was like, pretty much everyone's gonna be either they're not gonna give a shit and they're gonna be like, yeah, or they're gonna be hella disappointed. Like, what else are they gonna be? You know, like.
But guys, what about? So you've talked a lot about individual concerns you had, individual anxieties. Were there things you were concerned about in the relationship itself? Whether it had to do with boundaries, sexual health, sexual fluidity. I mean, Melissa, you were in a marriage before, and then you met this lovely man, right?
Yeah.
And I wonder if that leaves an imprint in terms of worrying about your own security as a couple.
Oh, no, I didn't have any, like, I probably should have thought about shit with the relationship. We had problems come up, but I didn't have any. I had no anxieties about us. You know, like, no, I didn't worry about that. I wasn't.
That felt solid.
Yeah, no jealousy, no anything. I think we didn't. Don't think we realized what we were getting into. And then later on, we had problems come up, you know, of just like boundaries and who's going to do which part of the work and what happens when one person wants to work and the other person doesn't and all that shit. But at the beginning, no, it was all just like, this is great.
Yeah, in terms of engaging with people in chat, I mean, it really didn't seem to be, like, there was very much jealousy coming up in terms of kind of keeping like a flirtatious vibe with people or being in a sexual space verbally, or even like you know, when performing live and communicating with people in chat. There really didn't seem to be much that we were struggling with in terms of issues like that, which I'm feeling very thankful for.
Yeah,
I feel like it's probably extremely rare.
Right, I'm like, wait, how did we not?
Yeah. So there wasn't a lot of jealousy in the beginning. Melissa, you used the word boundaries before, where boundaries had become a challenge for a period or maybe a couple of instances. Before we get to the question of boundaries, off camera, how would you guys identify your relationship model? Is it monogamous? Is it open? Is it poly? Something else?
No, we're so bad at definitions, but
I think this is one we've definitely struggled to like put the pin in. I can say like this. I mean, I don't think I'm not interested in bringing in another full-time emotional and psychological and financial partner into our relationship. I don't think that's something I'm interested in. I think I like having a primary and having
maybe like play
a very sort of monogamous feeling relationship. However, I think both of us do get a lot out of playing physically with others, but it's not just physical, because that's not the barrier for whether or not we want to interact with others. And I don't know how to put my finger on this.
So we don't date people. Like, I don't go on my own dates. He doesn't go on his own dates. We don't like, it's not like we meet another couple and we have to swap just like this. And, you know, like, there's no have tos. We're open for whatever. We tend to behave monogamously. I think we're open for whatever, just depending on, like, if the flow is right.
So from what you're describing, it actually does sound, I know you don't love labels. It sounds like not a poly relationship. It sounds very much like an open relationship.
Yeah.
And all open relationships have rules and boundaries, and, you know, there's conversations about how to prioritize the person who is your long-term partner, right? And so, is your version of openness playing with other people together, or do you sometimes play with other people separately?
We haven't played with anybody separately.
Yeah.
It's generally not something we're...
It's not something we're interested in, but it's also not something that's... there's no hard no's on that. We've both, like, when we've had lovers, like a third, for example, we've both said, it's fine with me if you're with that person and I'm not around. No, it just hasn't happened.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, I don't know why, but it just hasn't actually happened. It's okay with us, but it just doesn't happen.
Well, I know why it doesn't happen, because you guys spend a ridiculous amount of time together, it seems, which is great, but I mean, I can't imagine it, but it's
right.
I'm curious to know how your sex life on camera has impacted your dynamic, sexual and otherwise, off camera.
Whew.
Yeah. So we definitely kind of made it a thing when we first started camming specifically. I remember at the beginning we had kind of an understanding that we wanted to make sure that our off-camera sex was very connected and very intimate and very present before we perform on camera. So I remember it's like if we ever had an issue, if we had a fight or a disagreement, and we like didn't, you know, we were just like, you know, we took some time, like a day or two apart. We made sure that we came back and had an intimate off-camera experience before we decided to connect on screen again. So that felt like a good, like we needed to transition back in. So we weren't disconnected and reconnecting on screen. You know, like we wanted to make sure we were sort of going into that space connected, and so That's the best way I can kind of describe it, I think.
Wow, yeah, that sounds great. Melissa, would you add anything to that?
Oh, I'm just laughing because I was like, that's what we used to do. That's right. Now we don't. Like, no, like now there's very little. It feels the only thing intrusive about filming ourselves now is the lights. Like, it's just the only time I'll say no to filming is just if it's nice and dark and I just really don't want to turn on the light. It has nothing to do with letting other people in. It's like the camera's like a third in our relationship all the time,
so
and it's like totally fine. But back then it didn't feel that way. It felt like a new person, you know what I mean? But now it's just like whatever. The only time like I said, it's like I got a headache.
That thing out of here.
Like I'm not turning that fucking light on. If he'll turn the ISO up really high, we can keep the lights low. You know what I mean? But I don't find a huge difference in our sex on and off camera, other than.
We're fumbling with stuff,
we're fumbling
right?
with stuff. So when we don't have the camera and we're not giving a shit, it's just like uglier sex, if you will, like missionary, like not very exciting, you know, like missionary, you know, like so that would be the only thing that would be different at this point. Yeah.
I would challenge the idea that your boring missionary sex is not exciting. I think lots of people are probably. I've seen you guys do some wild things. I'm sure people are like, oh. How romantic. They're doing like the sweet normal thing. That's so great. I can relate to that, you know?
And we do that. We definitely do that on cam and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, if you're both just hugging each other and that's all that the making love is, there really isn't, you know, you literally can't get a camera to show much of what's going on. Yeah, so it's just kind of like
production value.
Yeah, there you go. And it's not, so I mean, every once in a while, you know, we definitely give people that real experience, but it's just like... Yeah, sometimes I'm just lazy.
Would you say that being able to have sex on camera, knowing people are watching, has allowed you to be more expansive in terms of what you've been able to try to do or what
So grateful for
that. What have you
so grateful for those people
that you wouldn't have done.
Oh, I have a new one. I've got one ready to go. Like,
every day we've got these things. Thank God for our viewers. We love our viewers.
Like just recently, because of an influence of another cam model out there, I learned that like putting an ice cube in my butt, for instance, was a thing. You know, I'm like, oh wow, that's fun. I mean, it's not something I'm just gonna like, hey babe, grab me an ice cube when you're on upstairs. I'm just sitting around like, yeah, it's nice. No, but it's fun on camera, and I somebody requested that, and it came from another cam model, and I was just thinking, wow, like, you know, I never would have thought to do that had I not been influenced by somebody in this space.
I mean, did you have to use lube?
No, lube doesn't help. Lube does not help. And the ass is so much harder to do than the vagina. You put it in the vagina, it's like whatever. But the ass is like, whoa, baby.
And I don't know if you can see in here. Look at these ice cubes. They're the long kind of oval shaped ice cubes. Yes. So the ones in our freezer are not like the block ones.
I have a point to sum this all up. So before we started camming, we just had sex. Now we have sex and we have like sport sex, I think. And we have agreed to it. Like we have decided that is something like we like to do. You know, it's like the craziest positions, you know, weird angles, trying stuff that maybe we wouldn't try maybe trying stuff that we wouldn't try in our own private lives, but we find it fun or interesting or funny. It's almost more like, it's not a turn on, it's like sport, I guess.
Okay.
So I don't know, like how to explain that, but
interesting.
Yeah. So
would you describe it a similar way?
I don't know that I would use the word sport. I think that one's kind of like weird. Like, but more acrobatic, more like it's entertaining for sure. I think. I mean, I just try to be entertaining. Really, just it's not even so much like I'm not even so much trying to turn you on every time. I'm just almost more just trying to be entertaining.
Yeah, sometimes it's just funny, you know, to like see. Yeah, I don't know, like. Right. Yeah, I mean, just all the different kinds of things that we try to come up with are just kind of, try to make sex funny. You know what I mean?
Lost the question. What was the original question?
No, the question was just whether or not
change the dynamic off camera or on camera. I think,
but you answered it to a degree. Like, it's acrobatic, it's fun. And one thing you said, Jason, really stood out to me. You wanted to be, you're focusing on being entertaining more than on pleasuring or getting off. And what's interesting about that is,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that's not the whole of it, but at times that's what it is.
On camera, anyway. Sure.
I hear that.
Well, because you
yeah.
focus on pleasuring and getting off, you'll be getting off, and then you're done with your show. So it's got to be fun and funny until you're ready to do the pleasure get off thing, I guess.
Yeah. And so that brings me to a question that, a lot of guys who come into therapy or couples, they struggle with, they worry about. They're like, what if I can't last long enough? What if I last too long?
Right.
There's issues of performance anxiety,
Yeah.
And then if somebody doesn't get off, often the other person feels like, wow, did I do this right?
Exactly.
Like, it feels personal. Often it's not, but it feels that way anyway. And so I just wonder if any of those, those are like everyday people problems. I'm just wondering if porn stars like you experience those.
Definitely. That was probably one of the things that I thought a lot about when we first got going, and we had a lot of conversations with like how to manage my how many times am I going to come every day, or how many how do I manage that sort of routine and that experience.
I think for couples in general, it's all about the penis, you know what I mean? Because that's the thing that most, like, it's like what makes the show start. It's what makes the show end, you know what I mean? Like when the penis comes up, the show's starting, and when the penis ejaculates, that's, it's like if those things don't happen, there's no show, and so it's just so much pressure, and a lot of people in chat really do not understand how it works, and you wonder if they've had sex before, or what the deal is, or so it's like you have these comments just spewing in there, and you're just like, right. Yeah, I think it's incredibly overwhelming and distracting. I feel really I feel for all of the men who are doing porn, and let me just say all the penis owners who are doing porn out there, because if you're expected to ejaculate and expected to be hard, those are also, it's like really takes a lot of energy to do both of those things. So anyway,
I've thank you for talking, because it gave me a chance to really think about this. I think the thing, again, and I think this is back to me wanting to be entertaining and wanting to put on a good show for people. I come from a customer service background. I want my customers to be happy. I want everyone to,
You want a good tip.
I want a good tip, damn it. But also I like that. I like seeing a smile on people's face. I like people feeling like they received something good, and that it just landed. Well, it's not always about what I'm getting in return. It's like, I like the gift. Process. So my point was that I remember having a couple times where I felt like maybe we sold tickets to a private ticket show, and then I came really early and I didn't perform very well. I was more.
Was that?
What's that?
Can you set the scene a little bit? That was.
Oh, okay. So
a private ticket show. What does that mean?
During a live stream, we have an option to perform in public, or we can ask people to tip a certain amount of tokens, and they will be given a ticket into a private show. Which means for everyone in the public space, the screen will go black unless you've paid for a ticket, and then you can continue watching the show after a certain point in time. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So So these people have.
You usually give a time estimate. We
and
will
it's
be in there for this amount of minutes.
Yeah. Come watch our ticket show. We're gonna have sex. We're gonna do these things, a variety of positions, and then you'll get to see some, a cum shot, or maybe not, or whatever. We'll try to set it up so people know what they're getting and what we're about to provide. And I know I have, come really early on in that time frame before, and I felt like. I didn't feel like it was diminishing sort of, my feeling of myself, or how I'm perceived as like a man, or like a person or something. But I definitely felt like I had not satisfied the offering that I said I was giving in terms of providing a good quality show and entertaining service, of being fully, I didn't follow through with the thing I was saying I was going to provide. So we've learned from that, and we've decided not to use.
How did the audience react? Like the people who gave these tokens?
Actually, to be honest, very supportive. Most of the time, very positive. Like it's been it's mostly been my own internal dialogue that's been the biggest hurdle. It really hasn't been the external dialogue from other people. It's been my own like stuff. So.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
I'm curious to know how consumers, people watching your porn, have how they influence how you feel about yourself. And I asked this I'll give some background in terms of what I'm getting at.
Sure.
I think consumers learn, people watching porn, people in the world have an idea about what is taboo, what is hard to find, what is in demand. And your client base kind of sets up, or they have a large say in what it is you do on camera, right? And I don't know if that's something you always want to do, if one of you gets more attention than the other, if any of you gets negative attention. So I'm curious to know how all of this audience engagement impacts your own sense of self and how, Go ahead. It seems like you both have something ready to go. So
either one.
You go for it.
I was just going to say, they can be a really great mirror.
Okay.
And after a while of realizing, kind of what comments to filter out and whatnot, you can finally allow it to be a mirror either for you or a mirror for how, like, society is doing that day. Because if they're just projecting and projecting and projecting on you and it's not true, you can be like, okay, wow, like, look at what they're dealing with. And if it really hits you hard and you're like, oh, that hurts, then you can go home and check out what's going on with that and see if it's true and whatnot. So I'm very thankful for it. Like, I can't get away with shit anymore.
Okay, so you have to tell me what this means. What are the nicer things people are saying, and what are the harder things people are saying? And of the harder side, it sounds like you're getting a mix of like terrible, like not constructive, but also constructive feedback. Is that it?
That's correct. Yeah, I would say it's not constructive and constructive, as well as then just general like nice community feel. So that's pretty much what you.
So I think a general way to kind of like what I'm hearing is like, you kind of get a reflection of like maybe my cam show didn't go very well today because we really didn't bring a lot of energy, and maybe that was reflective of like maybe I didn't really bring my A game. I didn't bring my 100% today. And so my cam show didn't go very well, and that's a reflection of what I did. Then there's days where it's like, wow, I feel like I'm really bringing it.
Yeah.
Everyone else, like they're
all angry.
Maybe I need to check the astrology today because there's something sort of larger than me happening.
Or they're all sad, or they're all
it's
super interesting.
Here's what I have a hard time wrapping my head around. You're on sites like Chatterbait. People are getting off while they're watching you. They're communicating with you. What is there to be angry about? Do you mean angry as like, are you being kind of, is that a euphemism for something else, or are people actually
No, they actually seem angry.
Well, I think it's Chatterbait. There's a lot of chatting, and a lot of people come there for community and just for the friendships, and they know you, and it's a daily, like, they're your regulars, and they come in every single day. So sometimes people, will come in all like, yay, I just had this great experience, and all these other things happened, and other days, all of your regulars, so the same screen names you see every day, maybe they all have some negative news about their life, for example. So for us, it's definitely, especially in our room, we have long lulls where there's no sex, and so there's a lot of community building and things like that. So that's when you get most of that feedback. When there's sex happening, usually it's all really positive feedback and just kind of like,
most part,
everybody's getting off, and some people say their dirty talk, and we have mods, so we have people in chat that can clean up inappropriate comments or erroneous things that just don't make sense out of context, spam moderators,
little moderators,
advertisements, shit like that. So we've got all that kind of covered. So so and believe it or not, people are not like, you big fat cow, like as often as you might think they would be, or I
would hope they would never say that.
I mean,
I just expected more.
I'm not a big buff guy, so people, I get the skinny body shame a good bit. Things like that come up.
Really?
But we get way more body shame when we stream on Twitch than when we're on Chatterbait.
But for the most part, like 90% of the time, it's positive or more.
Yeah.
Or more, it's positive.
But in the non-adult spaces, that's where you get most of your body shame and your real big insults. It's the adult spaces that are pretty nice, actually.
Okay. Well, has there been a time where you both were trying something new on camera that you thought would be fun, but maybe didn't turn out to be what you thought it would be. And that could be like, this experience isn't fun, or it could be, it's making me feel bad that my partner is doing this thing, or is talking to me this way, or is, I don't know.
Oh, yeah. We've made so many mistakes.
I'm interested in that.
An easy extreme example. I don't know. Do we want to talk about like the first one that somebody tipped?
I fear that might not be the best one to talk about, but I mean, whatever. Go ahead. You know, like.
Well, is there another example? Like
somebody was just like, "Hey, if I give you this much money, will you smack her across the face?" And I was like, "Hey, I've never been hit in the face. I want to know what it feels like."
I've never hit anybody.
So yeah.
Okay.
And then that was one of those where I was like, oh, that's why people don't want to get hit in the face. It like hurts really bad. You like get all these stars. And he felt bad and I felt bad. And it was one of those where like, did we just sell our souls? You know?
I mean, Jason, you slapped your wife.
He clocked me. It was good. I was like, give it to me good, baby. So, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
But hey, we're all allowed to try things, right? It was a consensual moment. I asked for it. He asked for it. Everybody was consensual. And then afterwards, I was like, wow, don't want to do that again.
It's just a different area of skin than on your ass, you know? It's just like the spanks are the same. It's just like different area of the body.
But yeah, so I think we've definitely been willing to try things. You know, people ask stuff and I'm like, all right, it doesn't sound like the worst thing. Like, I'm all about life experiences. I love living. I love being here. So I personally love it when they challenge me to do, you know, to do weird things. I mean, the weirdest thing that I do regularly is that I will go out in the garden and I will get my feet wet. This is a particular person who likes this fetish. And I'll come back in with dirty feet and I will lick the dirt off my feet and spit the dirt out.
So that's something she discovered she likes.
I liked it personally. Had no idea I liked it. It was one of those I was like, I'll try it. You know, it can't be that bad. It's probably gonna taste like coffee or something. Turned out I was like really into it, all like Mother Earth shit. You know, like I'm still part of the world. You know, I don't know. I really like it, so it works for me. Whatever. You know, I really.
It's very on brand.
Right. I expected to do it once and hate it, kind of like the slap, but it turned out to be something nice. So I like that we try.
Heels are a good example of one where it's like they were kind of triggery for a while for you. I remember like you wore them in your previous life. Wearing heels. A lot of people want to come in and tip for her to wear heels or something like that. And I remember for a while there it was like a no, I'm not wearing those heels. And more recently they've become more acceptable. But it's definitely something somebody's requested. I remember you putting them on one time and then it was like, no, I have to take these off right now. Fuck this. You know?
Because I had just come from that whole quitting the professional life and quitting that whole world. So I was still triggery, but now I've been away from that for so long that I'm like, oh, okay, I'll put on these. Remember when I used to wear those, you know? So, yeah.
You guys also have sex. It seems like you have sex with other partners on camera more than off camera. Would that be accurate?
No. The other way around.
Oh.
Like on camera more than off. Is that what you said?
Correct.
Yes. Yeah. On camera more than off, yes.
Okay. And so I wonder, are there boundaries for what you're okay with each other doing with other people? Is that something that gets talked about in advance?
Yeah.
Very much.
And has there... Okay, so I want to know a little bit about what those agreements or rules are.
Sure.
If you don't mind sharing.
Sure. Okay, so I think what I've observed is that we generally start with like what am I comfortable with before we get into other people's stuff. I generally start with like, hey, babe, this is what I'm feeling right now. This is what I'm desiring. I'm interested in, you know, if we've already decided who the other person or people are. It's like these are the things that I feel comfortable in my mind right now. Maybe engaging with them, doing these things. Like there's sometimes when, you know, we've cammed with another couple and I'm like, hey, I'm not really a yes on the male interactive today. I'm just not in that space. And so while I may have interacted with that person in the past, I'm not today. And so I say, hey, today I'm not feeling that. Let's not push that. And I also have that communication with them too. Hey, I know we've done this in the past, but I'm feeling today is like a no. It's nothing personal, but that's where I'm at. So stuff like
that sounds good.
And then we go from there, and then we just kind of start the conversations like, this is where I am, where are you, how do you feel about that, do you have any objection to that, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I'm going to ask some follow up on this because when I work with couples around open relationships, one of the things that people struggle with articulating is what is it that I want to be able to do with another partner?
Mm-hmm.
And am I doing something with another partner that I don't always do with my own partner? And, or are there certain kinds of sex that I might have with somebody else, whether it's oral or rimming or anal or whatever it is, like is it something that, that's going to make my partner feel a bit insecure, or they're going to be like, insecure is maybe not even a nice word. They might just say like, it makes me feel bad. Let's say, if you're doing a thing with somebody else, because that particular thing feels like an us thing. So I wonder for both of you. I've heard from you a bit, Jason. Melissa, I'm really interested in knowing if about a bit more about boundaries, rules, and I'm just gonna let you run it.
Okay. Well, I think one really important thing to mention is that we require testing before anybody that we're with, and to like look at the tests and things like that. So we're not. That's just something that is just gives me too much anxiety to pass up. So. The encounters are usually not casual. They're usually planned because we have to be like, hey, by the way, everybody's got to get tested. So once that's happened, then there's a lot less stress, because then you don't really have to worry as much about boundaries for health reasons.
And is it always condomless sex then?
With me, condoms, because I'm not on birth control. But he can do whatever he wants with whomever. It's all about whatever the partner he's with, like what they work out.
Right.
I see. Okay.
And I think we've also spoken that if there's a female that is not on birth control, I don't think it's within our relationship boundaries for me to potentially get another person pregnant.
Yeah, we're not trying
and bring
to
that into the relationship.
Yeah, we're not.
I think that's probably that's a boundary at this point too. So the only other two females that I've interacted with within our relationship have both been either on birth control or have had
tubes tied.
So
yeah.
So what's the official word for that? Sorry, it's not.
I think it's tubes tied. It's not a hysterectomy. Anyway, yeah, the woman who's had her tubes tied, like I had no problem with him coming inside of her, for example. Like I don't have any. Particular limits. We both aren't really big anal fans, but I wouldn't have a problem with any anal action with any male or female with him, and I don't think he would with me. And we have played with other people in those ways, and so I think the only thing with us is just testing is really, really important, and then just communicating with each other, because whatever.
Interesting. Yeah. So beyond like sexual health and these like precautions, there's no, and those are like physical health things,
Yeah.
But emotionally, there's no hierarchy of sexual acts that are not allowed with some people, but allowed with other people. Is that right?
Other than child, whatever, getting someone pregnant. Yeah. Right. We're monogamous on the child family creation right now. Now I'm personally like open to anything that might develop if somebody really were to fit with us and everything like that, and we want to have another woman and he gets her pregnant. Like I'm not jealous about that, But so let me talk to you. So I don't know why it went away, but there was a time when I was jealous. So I can talk to you about that if you want, but for some reason there's just not an ounce of it now.
I'm curious about that time, because that is something so many people experience.
Exactly.
And I don't know that it's not all bad, but it gets in the way.
Yes.
So tell me about that.
It can make things difficult or confusing or
so when I think part of what I was concerned about, I didn't really learn about proper testing and really being adamant about testing and everything like that until I got into this industry where it's just standard, because nobody's going to collaborate with anybody else unless you're, it's just like so standard. It's like, well, I got my tests for this and this and this. And so I started to realize like, oh my gosh, like my life before like was not this kind of health integrity. And so that was where a lot of that jealousy was coming from, was like, what if she has something? What if he goes off and he makes out with somebody in the club and they have something, and that was always my concern, and that personally was mine.
Your fluidity talk is coming to mind for some reason.
So that was a big thing, but there was a point in time when there was a situation we had talked about having an interaction with another couple. and we were at a burn, and there was a hot tub, which is amazing that they could even make a hot tub happen, first of all, in the middle of the field. But anyways, there's this awesome hot tub happening. So we're now with this other couple, and 2 other girls get in the tub. And one of the girls had been very flirty with us and with other people throughout the burn. And she was in quite a state, and she was very sexually aggressive. But nobody was outright saying no. Right. And so we had communicated about doing something with the other couple. Yet this girl came onto me, and I allowed it. I allowed things to happen. And I started to get really almost like triggered because she was being so aggressive, and I hadn't stayed up for myself. And I'm going, because like, I don't have a lot of experience with other women, but I'm always like excited that a girl likes me, but I don't know what to do. But I was realizing like she was crossing my boundaries, but it's my first time that a girl had ever done that. I was like, oh, I know what to do if a guy does it, but not. So I was just like, I was in that frozen place, you know, like unfortunately with that. I hate when you freeze and you're being sexually assaulted because you need to just say no, but I freeze instead. He takes it as, cool, I guess she's cool to play with. And afterwards, we also realized that I think intuitively he was realizing that she was being kind of intense with
everybody
me.
In the hot tub afterwards realized this person was super not fitting the vibe.
But basically, like, he kind of started to engage with her, and it got very heated and very, like, intense, and it was almost like, you know, like, there was this intense orgasm, and then, you know, some comments afterwards, and I just didn't appreciate the comments, and I didn't like the way it had gone down, and I felt really undervalued and very upset, and all in all,
in the moment, I didn't respond the right way. I think I was even under the influence of something at the time. So my boundaries were very sort of loose, and I may not have been as sort of rigid or responsive or present in a way that I probably at this point know I like staying more present, especially in these types of moments. Turns out it's better.
Yeah, we were ungrounded. We hadn't communicated. Somebody suddenly came. You know, it's like we realized that there's no sudden come-ons and random hookups. Like, we need to talk about things. We had talked about things with this other couple. We were in a communicative place with them, and so it was like we had broken our own values, and it really screwed it. You know, it was just really it messed everything up, and so
it seems, you know, like, as wild as porn can sound to a lot of people, it comes with very specific. This setting, the structure comes with a lot of parameters. It's like built in, right? There's, like, just while you're setting up, there's time to talk about things. Yeah. There's an opportunity to pause the camera. There's all kinds of opportunities that don't present themselves when you're doing it in real life, and this organic thing is developing.
Good point.
And it's really interesting to think about just like how in front of a camera you guys might feel like you're just part of a strong team, but don't necessarily feel like that out in the world, because there's just so many variables.
You know? There's a lot of variables, right?
That's a beard strokey moment right there.
I love you so much, man.
You get it.
It's really clever.
About couples who, you know, they have good talks about what they want to do openly. As a couple in an open relationship. And it doesn't always pan out, you know, when they say, we want to have a threesome, you know, and they don't say
for your birthday.
For your birthday.
Yes.
My favorite.
I mean, it's like an old trope, right? Like, anyway, great. Do that. But what doesn't get articulated is, like, how is everyone going to be included? What does checking in look like? What is it truly that each person wants to do with the third person? And, like, is there, like, what is our tendency? Are we going to experience compersion? Are we going to feel very great when this third person is into our partner? Does it make us feel anxious, right? It's hard to know. It's hard to separate if that anxiety is about jealousy or if you're worried about your partner's safety.
Right. Very much.
You know, there's so much to kind of sort out.
Practice, you know, just trying it and realizing you might fuck up and then talking about it again. I feel like that's what I'm so grateful about with porn, is that it's forced us to, like, practice, quote unquote, sex more often.
Totally.
You know?
Melissa, I'm so sorry to hear about this experience that you had at the burn. It's very much sounds like assault. How did you recover from that? What was the impact on your ability to like be connected to your body even after?
Oh, it was quite devastating. I was also in a state of processing some other grief and going through some dietary changes. So it hit me all at once. I had some nutritional deficiencies and this, and it was actually a really big life-changing moment for me. But I don't think that's all related to the jealousy. I think it just happened to be one of those, cosmic moments. But it was really hard. And it's nice that she actually reached out and was like, hey, I noticed I did this and I'm really sorry. And, and I was like, hey, I didn't speak up for myself though,
Mind blown.
Right.
Like...
So, I mean, I think we all were able to heal in a way. I know, I love the hippies. It was so great.
This is a real burner. This is like somebody who's got the real burner spirit and wow, we didn't know this person at the time very well. And now it's like, wow, okay, they've kind of come full circle.
Yeah. So, and we haven't seen her since, but I'm definitely not opposed to seeing her. But yeah, no, it was a very impactful moment. I've had a lot of trouble saying no because I was so forced to do so many things my whole life. And I'm still to this day working on my no's and expressing them, appropriately because a lot of times my nose, like I will. Sorry, when a lot of times I will let people do stuff. Sorry, I will let people do stuff when I don't want it because I don't like to say no. Yeah.
Okay.
So I've had to work on that a lot. Yeah.
After you guys shoot something together, do you do like a debrief, or do you go out for a cocktail and talk all about how fun it was and also what you wish might have been different or what you felt a bit uncomfortable with?
Not so formally.
Not formally.
I think we should though.
Formally.
I think I'm gonna start pouring, I'm gonna pour my water into a fancy glass next time and be like, let's debrief with a drink.
I like that. Yeah.
No, it's usually just like what I really like is almost every single time the second everything shuts off, we both are like, good job, babe, like that.
We do like a little, we do some fist bumps, or we usually share a hug. We share hugs.
Like, good job, and
and
usually it'll be like that was really tricky, but we got through it, or wow, we did so good today, or usually you follow it with kind of comments. Yeah, we are like
vibrating after we get offline. We're kind of like buzzed from the energy. I'm kind of feeling it, even just sitting here chatting with you.
Yeah. We'll review the video. We'll watch the video back and be like, did we get it? Did we get it? Because we get so excited. Because we never really know, since we're filming ourselves, we never really know how it turned out. So it's always like this excitement of like, oh, okay, now let's go watch what we produced because we have no idea if that's going to come out all right.
Sometimes, so we just check to see. I don't typically relive the whole experience.
No, we just check really quick. We just open the file and be like, okay, we got it.
I was just wondering that. Jason, you talked about, when you guys had first met, you came across a video where you had recorded yourself.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Do you guys watch your own videos and get off on that?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. The editing process is tough sometimes because it's really fresh and we haven't really seen it very many times. But by the end of editing, and by the time we release it to wherever, we're over it. I will watch it maybe another time or two. Like, there's a couple where there's a few moments I really, really enjoy personally. But by the time I've got it out there, I have to give it some time before I can revisit it again. It's too much. The loop is just too many times. You know. It's like any porn. You just get a little normalized or a little less sensitive to that particular content. You
really do, yeah. And I mean, in general, because now we watch porn for also to research. Oh, how did they do that shot? It's definitely something I'm much less. It's really got to grab me to turn me on. Most of the time I'm going to have a work brain around it and be like, oh, oh, good choice of color, Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I've got a couple more questions for you guys, and they come from the perspective of somebody who works with lots of people who talk about some of these things, okay?
Sure.
And so one thing a lot of people talk to me about is their own concern about sexual compulsion or sex addiction. Now, personally, I think that some people do struggle with that. Often I think when people are worried about that, usually there's more shame that they need to work through than there is compulsion or compulsive behavior. But I wonder for you, when you're so immersed in the porn world, do you worry about too much of something or a dose of something that is affecting your life in a certain way? Like, how do you know there's too much?
How do you know?
I don't.
I mean, you know if you're eating too much sugar and you're taking too many Xanaxes and you're, wasting too much time on the Pornhub. You know what I mean? Like, you know. And I think what really is when most people say, like you're saying, when they say they have a porn addiction, I think they have a concern with shame related to their activities that they're doing. But most of the people who I have talked to who have said that they have porn addictions aren't really consuming porn the number of hours that I would consider an addiction to be. Does that make sense?
Oh,
sure, like they might be maybe looking at it every day and they think it's an addiction, but they're not it's not like they're still going to work, they're getting their bills paid, they still have a relationship, they can have sex outside of porn, but yet they'll say they're addicted. And so I haven't actually, I mean, people have most addictions will run out your budget pretty quick. Also, so you can only have so much. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like, I'm not personally
I don't know. I think you would
coming.
Probably
I don't see it.
Well versed in that.
Yeah, because we don't really see them personally.
I really like hearing what you think about it because you're immersed in. It would be like me asking people who, who work in the alcohol industry.
Exactly. Like, do you see?
Right? I'd be
people?
like, how much is too much? And Melissa, I think you hit it on the head. I don't think it's necessarily about quantity. It's about the different ways you approach it and what your relationship to that thing is, right?
Yeah.
So if you're watching porn to figure out, like, what are these other people doing from a production perspective?
Sure.
Your entry point into it is different. It feels very much like a work. And then the other thing is you're looking at the implications. Like, am I doing so much of one thing that it takes away from or impacts another part of my life?
It's like any other addiction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I measure addiction too. Is like, is this negatively affecting something in my life? Because third-party observers can project all kinds of things onto us about their expectations of our consumption.
But I did hear somebody talk to me about like the addiction mentality with porn, which was basically like, so it's really an addiction to the shame feeling of like, I'm not supposed to look at this. I go to the website, I click the thing, I get the rush, I look at it for a few minutes, and then I guess it's like it's all about I shouldn't click this link, and then now I do click this link. And so for me, that's really the same thing as like, I shouldn't eat this cookie, and now I do eat this cookie. Some people are addicted to that little shouldn't moment, and some people are addicted to the actual cookie moment. But either way, like, that's just, that's a self-help thing. Like, that's not porn's fault. You know what I mean? Like,
good. I think you're putting out a trajectory of like gratification.
It's just it's just gratification. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's
It's just, what's your relationship with gratification?
What was the first moment with the cookie? Was it
I shouldn't have that. Like that whole I'm gonna have cookies because it's bad versus I'm gonna have cookies because they taste really, really good.
Then it's the feel good, and then either the guilt or the revel in the good. Like this whole.
It's this like emotional process, right?
Beyond the flavor,
right? There's the people who I shouldn't have it. Then you get it. Then there's the elation, and then maybe there isn't guilt, or there is guilt, and then there's
the covering up and the hiding and sneaking around and having the fun, like getting away with it,
Yeah, just there's a lot of dopamine in all of those, and the sneakiness, and then I had my thing, and then then it drops down, and then the dopamine, you want it so bad because it just dropped off, like dopamine's a bitch, it's like if you just don't have control over that cycle in your brain, it'll get you somewhere, whether it be sugar or cigarettes or drugs or porn or sex or.
So speaking of neurotransmitters in your brain, happy chemicals, and also this segueing from addiction, I work with a lot of people, and I live and breathe in a community where sex and substance use are often paired together intentionally, or it's become an unfortunate pairing where like it's fun when things are put together, but it's hard to separate them.
Right.
And I wonder, for you guys, are there rules you have with each other or with other people you play with around, being quote unquote of sound mind? Or how do you enter into consensual sex or figure out what it is you want to do? And does that jive with substances, whether it's cannabis or stimulants or hallucinogens or whatever, or alcohol? Sorry, I forgot the most basic. Or like alcohol.
Exactly. Sure.
The legal thing.
Can I have like a short answer and then I'll
Please, no, yeah, I'd love to hear you.
I would just say probably in our private lives, we're a lot more tolerant about the substances of the people that we're interacting with, whatever they're on, as long as it's a more circumstantial situation, you know, whether or not we feel like it's safe and they feel like it's safe and we've all negotiated what we feel like we need to negotiate. But if we're on camera, we're pretty much sticklers for sobriety. Because when we're on camera, we're entertaining. So we need to be entertaining you. We don't need to be like a shit show. So basically, that's kind of our policy there.
Yeah, too many opportunities for the boundaries to, you know, like, for instance, like, you know, if we have one of our friends over and they forget that, you know, we go by Jason and Melissa, and they know our actual name, and they forget all about it because they're, you know, intoxicated, and they just blurt out, you know, our names. It's pretty uncomfortable, and that's likely to happen less when everyone is of sound mind.
That's a good one.
So on cam and in that space, that's really important. In terms of how we interact with other people, we you know, we go and we gather. There's a community gathering place. One of our friends has a really big house, and it's like, it's the place where you know, a lot of the parties happen, and, you know, there's a dungeon, and there's hot tubs and pools and all these places to
awesome.
You know, there's couches and beds, and there's all the things. You know, it's really psychedelic.
Is it like the Dolly Parton Little Whorehouse in Texas?
It is.
Maybe.
It's a pretty psychedelic environment. The whole thing. There's lights and art and everything. All your needs are met, you know, for the most part.
Wow.
And so it's been an environment that has tested. It's an environment that. Well, I'm sorry.
It's like a community. It's one person's house, but our whole community hangs out there a lot, and we go to parties there a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. And when you say party, it's like people are having sex, and it's acceptable. It's part of the norm that you can.
It can be.
use substances.
Yes. Substances are very.
Substances are
as
okay,
long as
sex
you
is
are,
okay.
if you are, you know, able to handle your substances, and you can. Keep your, you know, your self-respect, I suppose, but you can still keep your respect for others and the space,
consent. You're
and everything consent. Is still consensual all the way around. Then you can hang out and enjoy the space and do as you need. In terms of interacting with others, you know, you're kind of expected to operate at a pretty high level of consent and understanding about communication, and that you're not bringing, you know, a bunch of you know, drama or unsafe practices into the space, I guess. I don't know how to say that exactly. But anyway, it has forced us to say, hey, like, you know, what are our boundaries before we go? We check in every time before we go. We say, how are we feeling tonight?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm in this place. Oh, I'm not really feeling like interacting with this person, or these people are interacting with each other at all. And most of the time, we don't interact with others. We just have that communication ahead of time anyway. You know?
Yeah, and we don't drink alcohol, so for us, it's not that we have a hard no on engaging with someone who's been drinking, but it tends that you're not really on the same page, right? If, like, you're, you know, you're kind of not in the same vibe, you know, and so we tend to not find ourselves in these really intimate sexual spaces with people who are drinking, because they tend to have other focuses and things like that for the evening. And if we're in a different headspace, it doesn't usually mesh for some reason. It seems like drinking meshes with drinking, so no judgment about that, but, you know, it doesn't ever seem...
No, that's interesting.
Know?
I often think about people using substances, including alcohol, to mitigate some of their shame, or, like, you know, Midori talked about, like, the squirrels, the things that are going on in your mind, those thoughts that get in the way.
Yeah.
And, so that's the kind of thing, I think, and it's just socially sanctioned as, like, appropriate and normal for people to do.
And so many people do just, like, have a drink. I see a lot of it, you know, have a drink to be on cam and be comfortable, but also just in regular life, have a drink to be comfortable. And so, you know, in terms of, like, that is, again, I don't really feel like, I don't know if we're experts on that, but just stopping drinking for us it's a difficult process, but you eventually learn how to not rely on that socially, and you find other ways to rely. You find other ways to engage socially. So, I mean, if you don't want to rely on alcohol to get in a sexual space, then you just simply have to, like, stop drinking alcohol and then have those awkward moments a few times until you eventually figure it out.
Well,
you know?
Sorry, just to clarify, I'm so glad you said this. You made a conscious decision to stop drinking? Had you in the past relied on alcohol to get you in the mood, or was it part of the setting in some way?
I relied on alcohol for stress relief more than sexiness, you know, it's just more like hard day at work, you know, have a drink, that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. And I just stopped because there was some alcoholism in my family, and I was like, oh, probably stay away
Okay.
from it. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember as a younger person, I can acknowledge that there was a social lubricant effect to alcohol for me personally, and I could observe it with others. I didn't often use it as a ploy to like grease the wheels of a situation. I might have for my own personal expression, but not to like, I didn't offer drinks to someone to try to get them to loosen up for me to like have some sort of engagement with them. I know that's pretty common, and I think that's not a healthy approach. But I think that it's common for people to use that, and I have personally in the past, and I feel like it's helped me become aware of some things that I feel like I want to be able to do without alcohol. I want to be able to say the thing I want to say, or approach a person, in a stranger, and say something that is like, hey, I like you, or hey, I want to start a conversation, or whatever that thing is I was using it for in the past, usually social lubricant of some sort.
Yeah. But it's allowed for social lubricant because it's socially acceptable, and you just have to deprogram yourself on that, because just approaching people is scary, and so it just like, I think it's just about accepting that sometimes going to a new place with new people is scary. Period. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's just like you don't have to. Yeah. It's okay. It's scary.
Well, I think that's all the questions I have for you guys. But for our next segment, I'm really excited to have you folks ask me some questions, and your audience members ask me some questions. And I wonder if there's something we can do right now to prime your audience for the kinds of questions they might ask us in our next session. So off the top of your head, are there things you would want to ask me? Anything to do in the realm of sexuality, sexual health, and mental health?
Sure.
Yeah, I think that we are definitely interested in a lot of the topics that you asked us about. So your views on things like sex addiction or porn addiction, or
like, when did you discover porn? Things
right,
like that.
And your personal opinions on porn.
Yeah, or your personal opinions on it. Things I'm really curious about your take on either porn addiction, or how to maintain sort of healthy relationships with it, and things like that. Also,
because we aren't considered mainstream in porn because of our age and our appearance, we are. I guess a lot of our audience is wondering about their representation in porn, and so we're starting to ask a lot of other people, do they feel do you feel well represented? Do you feel like people like you? Do you see people like you in porn a lot? And what is it,
Whatever like you means.
Yeah, whatever like you means, So I'm just listing things. I'm not giving you.
No, that's totally great, because I think give your audience some ideas, and when you talk about representation in porn, the mental health piece for me is, what messages does a person internalize, or what insecurities kind of get, the seeds of the insecurities get activated, or what fuel are we throwing into the fire around not being enough, right? If you're not represented, then your body's not seen as desirable. And what is the impact of that?
And you're reminding me, and also from a therapist perspective, what happens when one partner's very interested in either certain sexual acts or certain porn, the other one isn't, but they still want to stay together and they love each other very much? How do you negotiate those kinds of things? But how do you give them permission to do something that you don't want to give yourself permission to, or you just don't feel comfortable doing? Right. So a lot of people, how do I say this? A lot of people come to us and they say they feel guilty for feeling more sexual than their partner. So I think that would be a question that I might want your input on, or something. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I could answer it now, but I think we'll save it for.
Sounds good.
We'll save it for later.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the last thing I really, really want to, of course, hear about was your thoughts on the gender fluidity and body fluidity that you spoke about at SDS. So we might ask.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the people who are in the audience who might not know what we're alluding to, even, it's this talk that I gave in August at Sex Down South in Atlanta, and it was talking about how we learn to manage bodily fluids and react to bodily fluids in a public kind of sphere, and we learn a lot of that from the medical community. So we want to contain it, and we learn to be afraid of bodily fluids. In a sexual context, we have different degrees of comfort with fluid, and sometimes we're like, we really love it and we crave it and it gets us off, and other times we experience disgust. And it's like, what's that about? Did we learn that from the medical community? And how does that spill over into our understanding of gender fluidity and into personal fluidity? So like, who do we get to be? How do we get to show up in the world? How do we get to challenge norms? And what are other people's responses to that? So if I'm being fluid in terms of my gender presentation, does that bring out disgust and discomfort in somebody else, right? Because do they like the idea of containment and like really rigid boundaries? And you know, how does that help? That people love that kind of, like, people love the boxes, right?
Yeah,
it
exactly.
serves them in a particular
Give
way.
me some rules.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're reminding me that a lot of people, that we've had a number of comments that would say, from men saying that they had not been interested in trying, I don't know, for example, oral sex on a man, but that Jason has made them interested in it. And I'm sure that, like, a lot of different porn, you know, performers get those kinds of comments, but it's so interesting also that kind of fluidity of, like, when one person makes you suddenly cross and you're like, wait, I never liked that gender, but now I'm interested, maybe just a little bit, you know? And is that okay if it's just a little bit? Because do I have to be all the way interested in order to try it? And I think that's really important. We really deal with those themes a lot, that like, that fluidity is okay. You know, like, how gay are you today is okay. Or how straight are you today?
And in your world, I imagine, you know, the parameters of porn as work allow you to be more exploratory without the implications or the consequence of what does this mean for me personally.
Good point.
Right? Because I imagine that people who are having a difficult time are saying, I'm attracted to this thing now. What is that? Does that mean something about my identity?
Yes.
And identity and behavior can have a huge overlap, but they can also be separate, right? If you have a marginal identity, you're thinking about how your whole life might be very different because you're not fitting in some ways. And if you're thinking, oh no, my life for the most part fits this label, this structure, but I like to dabble in behavior, you know, it doesn't lead me to feel marginalized because it's just something I can do. I have this, the fluidity it's not met with a lot of resistance, then that looks different for you, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that could be very interesting. My question would be to the person, like, are you experiencing distress at this idea that you could be interested in somebody of the same gender? And is that because you think that has huge implications for your life, or does that just feel part of, you know, an exploratory kind of continuum? And that depends on a lot of things, no? Your setting, your friendships, what you allow yourself to do,
we get all those
your economic background. It's complicated.
Yeah, we do. I do hear all those concerns get expressed. You know, is this going to mean that? Does this mean I'm that? And it's like, exactly, does this behavior mean my identity is now this other thing? So, thank you so much. I really appreciate, you know, your insights on that, and I can't wait to talk to you about more of that. So,
same.
Totally. Awesome. Thanks for having me, and
thank you. Thanks for having us.
I look forward to being back.
Yeah, okay. I really appreciate this. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much, Rahim.
Thanks for taking the time.
All right.
It's been good. Take care.
Pleasure.
Thank you. You too.
See you.
Bye.